Mailbag Friday is back, so let's answer some questions to close out the week.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Give me a follow on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You can also catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Our goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers by opening day, and we're about 140 or so away. So keep subscribing and sending to people who haven't subscribed just yet to the Locked On Royals channel on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Not sure for those of you out there listening that haven't bought your tickets yet for opening day, I strongly encourage you to buy them on Gametime. It's where I go to buy all my tickets, not just to Royals games, but to Chiefs games. Bought some for the divisional game tomorrow where it's going to have a wind chill of -30. Didn't have to stress whatsoever about buying those tickets. Got them immediately, got a parking pass. It was all very simple. Barcode is right there, and I'll be ready to go to the game tomorrow. So if you're thinking about buying tickets, not just for tomorrow's game for Kansas City or for opening day, go to Gametime. It is the easiest app to use when purchasing your tickets. If you're a first-time listener, of course, welcome in. We always love new listeners here on the Locked On Royals channel. If you want to know a little bit more about me, I work in sports. I live here in Kansas City, work here at Sports Radio 810 WHB. Got a show once a week over there, and also a show Monday through Friday on ESPN Kansas City. So I stay busy with all things regarding sports. But when you come to this podcast, you know that you are getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And even though at this point in the offseason, we've gone to 3 episodes a week, usually we have 5 episodes a week once we get closer to the regular season and spring training, which we will be down for a couple of days. I believe February 17th through the 21st is where we're going to be in Surprise before the game starts. So we'll have some interviews down there. We'll have some video and keep you up to date with everything going on in Surprise with the Kansas City Royals. So keep subscribing. Follow us on all those podcasting pages. And, of course, for today's type of show, we have a Mailbag Friday. Send me your questions anytime. Even if it isn't on a Friday, I'll be sure to get to them at some point throughout the week on our podcast episode. So as I mentioned, it is a Mailbag Friday, which means this show is basically dedicated to the listeners and the followers out there. We got about 12 or so questions to get to, so I'm going to dive right into it. We're going to split it into 2 segments, so 6 and 6, and then we're going to close things out talking about the non-roster invites that are going to be showing up to Surprise Arizona and maybe have a chance to make the roster at some point in 2024. So first question we have here comes from Wick on Twitter. He says, does Greinke come back to Kansas City if the price is right, or do they just not have room for him? This has become such a curious deal, I think, because I was completely convinced after last year that Zach Greinke was done. I didn't think that he wanted to pitch another season. I think he had kind of accomplished everything that he had wanted to, but you never can really pigeonhole Zach Greinke, for lack of a better term. He is going to go out on his own time. He clearly still thinks he can pitch, but the fact the Royals haven't jumped on a deal yet makes me think they just don't have a spot for him at this point. I think he would want to pitch for the Royals. I think he would want to pitch for the Dodgers. You know, I think it'd be somebody he's thrown for before, and it's not going to be an expensive deal. I just think the Royals want to save that last bullpen spot for a lefty, and they've given me no signs that they're moving on from Jordan Lyles. So I just don't know if there's room at this point for Zach Greinke. I don't imagine that the price is too steep. I don't think they're waiting and seeing what the market's going to look like for a 40-year-old pitcher. It's not that high to begin with. So to me, it feels like the Royals are going to be moving on without him. Things could always change, but I don't know if it makes this bullpen a lot better if you're saving that last spot for a 40-year-old Zach Greinke. Question number 2 comes from Spencer. Do you believe Salvi is a Hall of Famer today? If not, do you think it's possible, and what stats achievements does he need to accomplish to get in? I think Salvia is a Royals Hall of Famer. I'm not going to go as far to say a Hall of Famer right now. He's a very decorated player. Nobody can deny that. Multiple Gold Gloves, multiple All-Star appearances. He's probably the best power-hitting catcher we've seen in the modern era. But I do think the last couple of years, ever since really the World Series championship, there's just been too many inconsistencies. A lot of injuries have plagued him. The defense has taken a severe decline. I'm not sure he can get there. I mean, to be honest with you, he'd have to win maybe an MVP. I mean, that's how I kind of hold MVPs to that standard, like how impossible it really is to do. But if you get an MVP, you've got an argumentative point to get into the Hall of Fame. I think he's a shoo-in, obviously, to be a Royals Hall of Famer. He could have his jersey retired one day for Kansas City. He's that popular here. I just don't know if I can go as far to see him in Cooperstown. He's going to have a chance, I think. But to me, with the injuries piling up at the end of his career and the defensive liability that he's kind of created around himself over the last couple of years, I think that's probably key to keeping him out. So to have a fighting chance, he'd have to win an MVP probably this late in his career, or, a Silver Slugger award to every single year that he closes out, or closes out the career in his books. He's going to have to do above and beyond things, I think, to get into Cooperstown when it's all said and done. Question number 3 comes from Aiden. How would you grade the latest Royals staff additions, and how much value do they offer to the Royals? I'm assuming you are meaning the pitching staff. If I'm not, correct me after this podcast goes out. But for the pitching staff, I got to say it's an A so far. They've significantly upgraded with Michael Wacha. They've significantly upgraded with Seth Lugo. You're going to hope for bounce backs from Brady Singer. Hope that Cole Reagans continues that trend. I got to give it an A. I've got no reason to doubt that. If you're going more so with the coaching staff, I know they had just recently added another coach to the dugout. So I don't think it's about that. Maybe you're meaning the front office. In that case, A++. Adding a couple of scouts to the organization. Brian Bridges is probably my favorite up there. I think it was DePuglia we were talking about in last week's episodes. You brought in Guerrero, who was over in Minnesota. Very, very, very bright minds for the game of baseball. And I think even some of the guys they brought in to work with the minor league department, they added a guy from Tread. They added a guy from Driveline. Exciting times for the Royals. So I hope I hit both of those for those questions. If you were trying to get that with my answer, I would say A's all around for that point. I think the Royals are really trying to be innovative in that department, and hopefully we can start seeing some results when adding talent to this organization. Question number 4 comes from Jackson. He asks, when the hell are we going to get a new TV deal? I feel like since there's a lot of buzz around the team right now, fans who maybe were completely checked out last season are now checked back in. I know a lot of fans, especially if you read the comments on any Royals social post, that they're going to be wanting a new TV deal. I just haven't heard anything on it, to be honest with you. And I don't want to jump the gun and give an answer that I really don't have much knowledge on. All we know for a fact is that Bally is not going to be the long-term answer for Royals baseball. I mean, last year was the dumbest thing ever. You're making fans pay a monthly subscription to watch your team play. Now, I know in the past with Fox Sports Midwest, you had to pay for cable to watch the team, but they made it so difficult to watch the team last year, not just the product on the field, actually finding these games. And sometimes you'd go into extra innings and they'd cut away to a live television of, a cooking show or something. It was awful. Everything about Bally was undeniably terrible last year. I really struggled, was frustrated many times trying to watch them play. But if that's the path moving forward, at least for one more year, we drop the prices, but I know it doesn't work that way in terms of sales. The better the team is, the more you drive the price up, not just with TV deals, but also with tickets to games and stuff like that. So to answer your question, Jackson, I don't think there has been much movement on it. I'm asking the same question. When's there going to be a new TV deal that's more applicable and better suited for the fans out there who want to watch this team? If you want to grow the game, stop making it so damn hard to watch this baseball team. And the last question I want to ask before we move on to our first break from Brian, he asked, any updates on Asa Lacy? I still believe in him. Well, for the first time in over a year, we actually did get some video from his Instagram page. He's been working out. He was not a non-roster invite to spring training, so maybe the goal is right now making sure he stays healthy, keep working in surprise after spring training. They can put him back in Double-A or High-A and work up from there. But the good news is we actually have footage, real-life footage. It's like finding Bigfoot. But we have footage of Asa Lacy throwing a baseball. Now, it was against the wall. It was kind of more of a workout than an actual simulated game or something like that, or a bullpen session. But we now have footage. We know that he is still in the organization. And I'd imagine this year, if he progresses and stays healthy, they're going to put him back to Double-A at some point and see if they can go from there and maybe build off just staying healthy, man. There's no great numbers to build off of. He didn't pitch last year, and he was terrible in 2022. So now it's kind of do or die time for Asa Lacy and the Royals organization. He has to show improvement, or they are going to move on from him next season. All right, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we still got about 6 or 7 questions to get to, so we'll do that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. We're also on TikTok and on Instagram at Locked_on_Royals. Before we go any further, let's give a shout out to one of the title sponsors today in Gametime. I've already purchased my opening day tickets, and you guessed it, I used Gametime to buy those tickets. Got 2 in the upper deck. Can't wait for it, hoping for great weather, and more importantly, hoping for a sellout in this game. And also this week, I bought tickets to the AFC divisional game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins. Going to be sub-zero temperatures, one of the coldest games in NFL history, but I didn't even think twice about it. I went to Gametime, bought some cheap tickets, just going to have to brave the weather at this point and hopefully can stay as warm as possible. And me, of course, being based here in Kansas City, I'm even repping some Kansas City Chiefs gear right now. Hopefully, it's going to be all worth it in the end. But moving forward, there's no other app I need to use than Gametime. They make it so easy for you. You're going by yourself, going with one other person, going with your family or a big group. It's just so easy to use. You don't have to worry about all these difficult sign-up processes and verification type stuff. It's such a simple app, and I can't stress it enough that you need to go over to Gametime now, create an account, and start buying some tickets. There are some great deals out there, and they let you know which are the best deals, the best seats. It's just the best possible app to use. So, again, I say go and download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off on your first purchase. So, you're going to the playoff game, you're going to opening day. Why not use that code? You get $20 off on that first purchase. Again, the terms apply. So create your account and redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. That is a steal of a deal. So download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now we got more questions that we're going to dive into, and I want to make sure I get everybody's questions here. Don't want to leave anybody out before we move on to our final segment of the week. So we got this one from Sooner Sean. He says, I think it's safe to say our early draft picks have been underwhelming outside of Bobby. Thoughts on what we do at the 6th spot this year? I personally find Jack Caglione or Vance Honeycutt more intriguing than reaching for a high school guy and the uncertainty that comes with it. This is a very unique question. I really do appreciate it because we're already looking ahead to the Major League Baseball draft, and where it would have been such a golden opportunity to be blessed with the number 1 or number 2 pick, have J.J. Weatherhold of West Virginia fall right into your lap, or Chase Burns, if you went the pitching route, right into your lap. You're going to have to get lucky at the 6th spot. I will say this about Caglione. I think the upside is so tremendous, but it is a risky pick, and it brings up the question, how risky can the Royals really be? I mean, they do need to hit on high-end talent, and you have to trust the development team, and I think the Royals minor league pitching department has been great. I know Caglione is a two-way player, so you could, make him a two-way guy and you could work on the pitching. But overall, I think he's going to be an outfielder and a big-time power bat for your system. But he does strike out a lot, which could be alarming when trying to take somebody like Caglione. Vance Honeycutt, I don't know if he's going to be there is the thing. But I do agree with you in this sense. I don't think I'm willing to go after a prep bat or a prep arm with that 6th overall pick. Not to say you need to just play it safe all the time, because the 18 draft was all about college players and it didn't really work out in your favor. but there is just tremendous talent. Even though the Royals had the 6th pick, they are getting a stud at 6. Whereas last year, I think there was about 5 true phenoms there, and the Royals weren't picking inside the top 5, so that didn't really work out in their favor. But Vance Honeycutt, I think, would be a stud. I'm already blanking on his name right now, but the kid out of Georgia, the big-time first baseman, had like a 480-foot home run last year. I mean, huge pop. I'm not sure why he's projected so low, but he is somebody you could be looking into. Vance Honeycutt, I do love. I just don't know if he's going to be there. Caglione, I do think is going to be there. Just don't know if he fits the Royals profile. Those are some of the guys I think I would look at and moving forward and what we'd have with these mock drafts, and maybe some guys that'll stand out once the college season rolls around once again. Satchel's asked on Twitter, been thinking about this one, will probably never happen, but I'm ready for new things to happen in baseball. Could there be a time in our lives where Blake Mitchell is a full-time hitter, part-time catcher, and every third-day reliever? Would be insane, but unrealistic. So what I'm getting here is a full-time hitter, part-time catcher, and every third-day reliever. And that would be Blake Mitchell, the first-round pick they took last year. Trying to talk this one through just so I can get it right. A full-time catcher, so just catching every single day. Then he could play third base part of the time and then also be a reliever. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't think there was any pitching profile on Blake Mitchell. I kind of see what you're saying because nobody has done that, right? It's been a two-way player like Shohei Ohtani, who is a pitcher and a hitter. Rarely played the outfield, didn't really work. It is unrealistic. I think you even pointed that out, that I don't think anybody that's a two-way player is going to play a position or two positions at that and then also pitch. That's just too much stress on a player. So for now, I probably will say that'll never happen in Major League Baseball just out of protection for the player. Marty asks on Twitter, I saw a video of Salvi working out. Do you think the Royals told him to get in better shape? I don't think the Royals had to tell Salvi to get in better shape. I think he's just, trimming up a lot better, trying different things. I mean, he's coming off a couple of injuries. He wants to be in the best possible shape. He's not getting any younger, so you want to make sure that moving forward, you're not worrying about those nagging injuries that can really hinder an older player. But Salvador Perez has always been a team-first guy. He's not a selfish player. I don't think the Royals would have had to go to him and say, hey, you need to start getting in shape. Salvi's always worked really hard, but I'll be quite honest with you. He looks about as thin as he was in 2014, 2015. He has really looked more of an athletic build, a slimmer build, and that's going to help him being behind the plate the majority of the time and catching this brand new rotation for the Royals. JDC asks who on the 40-man roster could play first base outside of Vinny Pasquantino and Salvi, anybody besides Prado. Well, Nick Lofton can play a little bit of first base. Hunter Renfroe can play a little bit of first base. I would like for them to teach Freddie Fermin how to, just on the off chance that he's going to need to fill in. You look down to the minor league level, CJ Alexander, he's the guy they got in the Drew Waters trade, a little bit older of a prospect, but he's giving you first base depth down there. I think that any of those utility guys, those super utility guys, can learn how to play first base. But in terms of the 26-man roster, I know you asked for the 40-man roster, you're probably looking at Pasquantino as the first baseman, then Renfroe, I'd say, is the second. Then it gets down to Salvi and maybe Nick Lofton as kind of a 3 and 4. That's my best guess so far with the first baseman on the roster. Next question we got here is from Jason. He says, will a potential starting pitcher get traded before the start of the season? The only guy I would say has a chance, and it'd be more of a salary dump, is Jordan Lyles. They're not going to be moving on from Brady Singer. Of course, you just brought in Seth Lugo, and you brought in Michael Wacha. Cole Reagans isn't going anywhere. So to me, I really do feel like this is a spot where Jordan Lyles is going to be traded for a salary dump or nobody's getting traded at all. Next question we got here is from Kevin. Which of the relief pitchers they brought in on minor league deals the most likely to break camp with the team? Best chance, I think, is Tyler Duffy or Dan Altavilla. Dan Altavilla's stuff has really got to play and surprise if he's got a chance. Even if Tyler Duffy doesn't make the opening day roster, I think he's going to be in Kansas City at some point. Just too much longevity at the major league level. They saw him a lot in Minnesota. I think he can be great depth for a bullpen that you're going to need more than just 8 guys on the year. Guys are going to get banged up, miss some times, and you need to have somebody you can count on. So Tyler Duffy, I think, is number 1 on the list. Then I'd go Dan Altavilla. Then number 3, probably Sam Long of those minor league deals. And this is going to be a little bit of a longer one. I'll try my best to answer it as quick as I can. Dwight asks, who are the 10 most valuable assets in the Royals organization with 4 more years of control remaining, major minor league roster? I'm going to go Bobby Witt Jr., Cole Reagans, Michael Garcia, Vinny Pasquantino. Then I will probably go with who? I'm already getting stumped on this. I'd probably go as far to say a Blake Walters or a Hero Wyatt. I think they're going to have huge upsides in Kansas City. Probably a Frank Mozzicato at that point. I really am a big believer in a Chandler Champlain or a Mason Barnett. I think that'd be another great fit. Javier Vaz is another one for me. I know I'm kind of throwing a lot of names. I might be at 10 already. And then one last name I'll throw in here. Oh, let's go with Carson Rockefeller. I think he's going to have a really big year. Him or Spencer Nivens, I'm really high on in the draft from last year. So those are my 10 guys, or roughly 10 guys that I have as 10 most valuable guys in the Royals organization. All right, before we go on to our final segment, a quick shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. When we return, we'll go over the roster invites for the Royals going into spring training. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Also find us on all the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're also on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers by opening day 2024. Before we move on to our final segment, let's give a shout out to the other sponsor today in FanDuel. The NFL regular season has wrapped up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, finding bets in the new Explore tab, and making a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and much, much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. And I know that for some people, that can make you a bit hesitant on betting my hard-earned money on games, but I promise you, once you get in the flow of things, there's just an adrenaline rush you get from it. Whether you're betting on baseball games, you're betting on football games, college or pros, you're betting on college basketball, the NBA, find your niche. Find what you're good at, and then start placing bets. Don't just throw your money away. Look at the great deals that FanDuel has. Look at the odds on it. Trust your gut. Never bet with your heart. Trust your gut. Trust your mind. Go with what all the other experts are saying. And if you ever want to take my advice, I'm sure throughout the season, we'll have some prop bets that we give to you on the Locked On Royals channel. So have fun. Go and create your FanDuel account today before the NFL playoffs start tomorrow. Well, the Royals did announce earlier this week the roster invites, the non-roster invites, I should say, to surprise Arizona. They got 23 of them. So real quickly, we'll go over the pitchers, catchers, infielders, and outfielders, starting with the pitchers. They've invited Dan Altavilla, who was on a minor league deal, Mason Barnett, who I just listed as one of my top 10 most valuable guys in the organization, Luis Cessa, another minor league deal guy they brought at the very beginning of the offseason, Christian Chamberlain, a guy who has been bouncing around the middle parts of the minor league level, Chandler Champlain, another guy coming off a great year at the minor league level in Double-A, Austin Cox, though he's a little bit different because he's not going to pitch this year. I'd be shocked if he did, or ripped up his knee at the very end of the year. I think that was in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken. Tyler Duffy, also just mentioned him as a guy that could break camp with the team. Sam Long, another minor league guy minor league deal guy, I should say, they got from the Oakland Athletics. Walter Pennington, another name there, and Beck Way, who they acquired in the Andrew Benintendi deal. So 2 of the Andrew Benintendi returns are going to be non-roster invites to spring training. Of course, we know that it was TJ Sikkema that is no longer with the team. He got picked up, I think, in the Rule 5 draft, that it was the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft. The catchers joining the Royals in surprise will be Tyler Cropley. Saw him a bit at the tail end of the year. Rodolfo Duran, another catching name on here. Carter Jensen, a higher round pick from a few years back. Logan Porter, got a chance to see him in September of last year. And Luka Tresh, a standout at NC State when they made their College World Series push. He was an undrafted free agent, and he is a big-time power hitter and has shown that so far at the lower levels of the minor league. So those are the 5 catchers that'll be joining the Royals in surprise. As for the infielders, CJ Alexander, who was in that Drew Waters deal with Atlanta, Mike Brosseau, a former postseason hero for the Tampa Bay Rays. He was brought in on a minor league deal back at the beginning part of December, or in December, excuse me. He was, I think, brought on during the winter meetings, if I can recall correctly. Cam Devaney, another guy they brought in on a smaller deal. Devin Mann, who was in the Ryan Yarbrough trade, a little bit older of a prospect, but the bat has shown to really project well, not only the AA level, the AAA level. Didn't pitch or didn't fare that well with Omaha last year, but he could be a guy that could provide some depth moving into the 2024 season. And the speedster Tyler Tolbert, also another non-roster invite. And the outfielders, only 3 on this list. And Nate Eaton, you guess you would call him a two-way player because wasn't that bad on the mound when he pitched in a blowout last year. Diego Hernandez, a top 30 prospect for the Royals, and John Rave, who is a defensive mastermind that we have seen so far down in AA Northwest Arkansas and Omaha. So those were the 23 non-roster invites for the Royals going into surprise Arizona. No shocks to me, I guess I would say. The ones I'm most excited about, how can you not be pumped about Mason Barnett? He was such a stud last year, rising quickly in the organization. Chandler Champlain looked really, really good. Those are 2 guys that would not surprise me at all if they made their debut in Kansas City, and I would say making their debut in the rotation, depending the health of the Royals rotation this year. I know for the Royals' sake, I don't think they want that to happen just because they're hoping the 5 they have out there right now are going to be the 5 that finish the year with them, assuming that all things go right. I just think that with the season being 162 games, you're going to need some depth. You're going to need some guys to have some spot starts. They'll get called up on a win to Kansas City and be ready to go. And Chandler Champlain, Mason Barnett, big guys, big frames. I think their stuff can play at the major league level, and I'm excited to see what they look like when pitchers and catchers report in about a month or so. As for the hitters, I'm more excited about the 40-man roster guys than I really am about the non-roster invites. I mean, CJ Alexander has big-time pop. He could be one of those guys like Pete O'Brien, I think it was, back in 2017, had this just unbelievable tear in surprise, and people were thinking he was going to be the DH. He didn't make the team, and then I think went back to Arizona or caught on with Oakland or something and ran into a couple more home runs, but you can never just buy that much stock into spring training. Some guys thrive, some guys don't. Some guys simply just view it as practice. But CJ Alexander, I'd imagine there's going to be a few games televised this year where he's just crushing them 460 feet. Everybody's going to fall in love with him because he does have huge pop, but the rest of his game, I don't think is ever going to be translated to the big league level, but might be interesting to see early on in spring training, at least in the beginning parts of March. Also excited to see, somebody like a Tyler Tolbert. I think the speed could be a weapon down the road for Kansas City. His bat came around just a little bit last year. Only thing with him, he's more of a seasoned prospect. He's not some young spring chicken like 21 or 22 getting his shot. He's been in the minor league system for quite some time, but when you've got speed like him, I think you can find a spot at the major league roster at some point. That can always happen, and that can especially happen when you're in the Kansas City Royals organization. And the last guy, I'm excited to see what Diego Hernandez can do. He unfortunately got hurt in spring training last year and missed a large chunk of the season. I think there is a Major League Baseball player in there somewhere, and he's going to get his chance to showcase that in front of this entire coaching staff in surprise Arizona coming up in about a month and a half. Well, that is going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Remember, this was our 3rd episode of the week, so we won't be back until Monday. And when we do come back on Monday, we're going to break down a little bit more of what this bench may look like. I know we discussed it a little bit yesterday, but I want to really give a deep dive into the bench, guys that I think are going to be there, And we're going to lay out this lineup now. I think this lineup is pretty much set. So I'm going to give you the batting order that I think is going to be there on opening day. Before we say goodbye for the weekend, one last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, you enjoy the weekend. You enjoy some playoff football, some college basketball, and we will talk to you on Monday. You take it easy, Kansas City.